Commission to begin. Call this meeting to order. Officer Lostrom, the roll call, please.
Commissioner Hannan is absent. Commissioner Koenig?
Here.
Commissioner Marinelli?
Here.
Commissioner Gupta?
Here.
Chair Galt?
Here.
Commissioner Kleinbaum is absent, and Commissioner Gittens.
Here. Great. Let's salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. So let's go to D, approving the order of agenda. Do I hear an approval?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Koenig?
Aye.
Commissioner Marinelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta?
Aye.
Chair Galt?
Aye.
And Commissioner Gittens.
Aye.
Go
So approved.
Thank you. And we should go to the blue folder items. I believe there were some that were created quite recently. Officer Lostrom, I'd be delighted to get that input from you.
There is a blue folder item. If you open blue folder item or J1, you should be able to see it. Just need a motion to receive and file.
Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Koenig,
Aye.
Commissioner Marinelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Chair Gall,
Aye.
and Commissioner Gittens.
Aye.
So moved, received and filed.
Did you get back to yours? I missed.
Great.
Go back here.
Oh, I have it.
And should we go to the consent calendar? Do we have anything on there?
Affidavit of posting and approval of the minutes for the last 3 meetings.
Okay, great. I'll skip the boilerplate and have F1 and F2 approved, which includes all 3 meetings. Can I do that in one approval process?
Yeah, one motion is good
Thank you.
for approval of the whole consent calendar.
May I have one motion for that, please?
I make that motion.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Koenig,
Aye.
Commissioner Marinelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Chair Gall,
Aye.
and Commissioner Gittens.
Aye.
So approved.
Thank you. Okay, great. G is excluded calendar items. I don't believe anything was excluded. Thoughts on that?
There's nothing. You can proceed.
Thank you. So public participation on non-agenda items, just to be formal, I will read it. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on this agenda for action. This section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Do we have anybody virtually or here that would like to comment or any pre-recorded postings?
Nobody present or requests submitted. No Zoom participants.
Great.
And sorry about that. And no e-comments.
Great. Item I, items continued from previous agendas. Believe we have that. Make a motion to close that.
You can proceed to J.
Thank you. Items for discussion prior to action. So J1 is Project Home Key. Welcome. Thank you.
Right where I showed you.
Right here?
And you can sit at the next one too.
Thank you.
Then one to his right. And that should come up.
Good evening, city staff. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Brian DeAndre. I'm Senior Vice President at Century Housing Corporation. I am joined this evening by Kyle Fessick, one of our development managers at Century, and Chris Galamis, who is our property manager for the Moonstone, and also a recent addition to the Leadership Redondo program. So we're very excited for Alex. But we're here this evening to talk a little bit about the project, and we prepared a presentation for you that we'll walk through, and we are happy to answer questions along the way or at the conclusion of the presentation. Just let us know as we move through the slides. So as I mentioned, Century Housing is a nonprofit organization. We've been around since 1995. We have kind of a unique history, being previously a state agency that was created as a result of litigation around the creation of the 105 freeway here through Los Angeles County. Our mission is one of investing in homes and communities so that the people we serve can enjoy healthy and vital and independent lives. We are both a housing developer and affordable housing manager. We're service providers. We're also a lender to other affordable housing developers throughout the state. We would consider ourselves to be vertically integrated in that we do the real estate development. We also do property management. We do case management and a lot of community development work. And the Moonstone fits very much into our portfolio of properties in and around Los Angeles County that counts now more than 2,100 homes. We have a pretty significant pipeline with a couple thousand on the way, including the 20 homes at the Moonstone. We ultimately aspire to be really good neighbors in the communities in which we develop, and we see ourselves as long-term stakeholders. We're not a buy and flip type organization. We buy and hold and really put a lot of thought and intention into the properties that become homes where our residents will live and hopefully enjoy productive lives. I'm going to turn things over to Kyle for a few minutes to talk about the project itself, and then I will conclude the presentation with some more information on our operations.
Is this one? Hey,
You're up.
all right. Perfect. Thank you for the introduction, Brian. All right. So, as Brian mentioned, my name is Kyle Fessick, and I'm actually the project manager for this particular project. And I just wanted to briefly touch on a few different topics before handing it back over to Brian. And first is the actual property in question. So this is going to be the Pacific Inn Motel. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but it's located at at 716 South Pacific Coast Highway, so actually just a few blocks from here. It's a relatively small property. It's only 20 units, and it has an on-site manager's unit that was recently a two-bedroom manager's unit. That's going to be changing, as I'll mention in a second. So when it comes to what's going to be happening at the property, the rehab is going to be primarily internal. So to make these livable units, we're going to be adding kitchenettes, which is the addition of a microwave, stovetop, refrigerator. This is obviously going to allow the residents to have their own cooking facilities and live within the units. Additionally, as I mentioned, there was a two-bedroom manager's unit on site. In order to allow for the use of this unit for services, we're breaking this up into a number of different parcels. So, or not parcels, but parts, I guess. Number one, we're going to have a one-bedroom manager's unit. Currently, it's 2 bedrooms. So, as we mentioned, Alex is going to be living there. We're also going to be having a property manager's office, as well as another office for case management. So as we mentioned, all of the provision of services is going to be taking place on site. So this will allow for both Alex to have his own office to actually manage the property and an office for the case manager to provide services to each of the residents. In addition to the, I guess, construction of a kitchenette as well as the manager's unit enhancements, we're also going to be improving the security of the property. So this is primarily one of the reasons that we wanted to come and present to everyone here, is just to allow you guys to provide your feedback and for us to integrate that into the rehab scope. So this is including a pedestrian and vehicular gate in the front of the property just to manage the ingress and egress of traffic. Number 2 is a more modern security system. This is almost I'm trying to think how to describe this. It's a much more modern system in the sense that it's actually automated in a sense, but then at the same time, we also have 24-hour surveillance from a remote monitoring firm, which allows just for a more accurate, I guess, representation of the property. Number 3 is going to be the improvements to the property. So there are a few different places where we have to, I guess, modernize the property in a sense. That's going to be for the HVAC system, plumbing, and electrical. And then finally, obviously, as Brian mentioned, we hope to be good neighbors, and with that comes the actual improvement of the facade and the streetscape along Pacific Coast Highway. So we'll be renaturalizing the front of the property. Right now, it's just I guess like a concrete slab. So in order to improve the pedestrian experience, we'll be renaturalizing that area with, I guess, more natural landscaping that you'd find in Redondo Beach. And when it comes to the timeline of this project, it's moved a little since we were initially offered funding, or I guess approved for funding back in April of this year. But we hope to start construction in December of this year and complete by May of 2023, and then hopefully have full occupancy by August 2023. All of these dates are actually something that we hope to I guess, get to at an earlier point. So initially, if any of you were at our previous meetings, as mentioned, we were initially offered or approved funding back in April of this year. We signed our county funding agreement in May, and we acquired the property in June with the anticipation of getting started with construction in September. Due to some plan check challenges, we've now pushed that back to December. So just in the sense of transparency, wanted to let you guys know that all of these dates are targets, rather, but we will definitely be having this property fully occupied by August of 2023. And then finally, before I hand it over to Brian, I just wanted to go through the dynamic of this project. So as Brian mentioned, we're Century Housing. Its development arm falls under Century Affordable Development, Inc. And we also have in-house property management that falls under Century Villages Property Management. And then finally, Century Oasis Residential Services is going to provide the case management that I previously mentioned. And then finally, when it comes to the locating of tenants and placing of tenants, that's all going to be done with our CES coordinator, who's Harbor Interfaith Services. And with that being said, back to Brian.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. So this evening follows on a series of outreach events that we've participated in conjunction with our Councilman Narenheim, starting back in June and then into July. I think we've done 3 different events where we listened to neighbors and received feedback. And one of the things we want to be really clear about is that this is not a shelter. This is not a facility. What this is an apartment building that contains 20 apartment homes that we will lease to our future residents. Every one of our residents will sign a lease. All of our residents will go through a criminal background and credit check. And we will apply our basic screening criteria. I know there have been a lot of concerns about are we going to be leasing to criminals and drug addicts and people with serious mental illnesses that will not be responsible tenants. And it is our intention to operate a safe and habitable property for not only our residents, all 20 households that we will house, but also for the surrounding community. So we do have a series of non-starter offenses that when we look at people's criminal background histories that won't work for us and that we screen out. And those include things like terrorism and arson and pedophilia and serious violent felonies. So we expect all of our residents to not only be law-abiding citizens, but also to abide by the terms of our residential lease agreements that we sign. So I just want to, I know this is the Public Safety Commission, and I know this is probably, these are issues that have probably been raised with you, so we wanted to kind of address that head on. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that. As it relates to on-site security, we will have 2 full-time staff at the property. As we mentioned earlier, Alex Galdamez, who's with us this evening, is our on-site property manager. Alex will live at the property in the single-family home that is on premises with a direct line of sight to every entrance to every apartment home at the Moonstone. In addition, we will have a full-time case manager dedicated to the property that will be charged with developing individualized case management plans with our residents and working with them to address the various barriers or issues they face in their lives, whether they are health-related, employment-related, education-related, et cetera. Our job is to help these individuals and households transition from homelessness into a full, productive life where they can be the best versions of themselves. We will have 24-hour crisis intervention resources available. We will develop a comprehensive emergency response plan. We very much intend to maintain an open line of communication with the police department when and if that is needed, and hopefully that's never the case. But we have established, obviously, a nice working relationship with Officer Kyle. I'm blanking on your last name, Kyle. Sorry about that.
That works perfect.
As it relates to who our future residents will be, Project Home Key was established by the state with the intention of creating housing opportunities for people that are experiencing homelessness. So these are individuals that will come through the local, what we call coordinated entry system. And this is a system that is being essentially managed by Harbor Interfaith Services in this particular service planning area, or SPA number 8. It should be noted that Century has a very long and productive working relationship with Harbor Interfaith Services, primarily at our community in Long Beach, where they've been a longtime provider of ours and operate a very successful program. We intend to work with the city to establish a local Redondo Beach preference, meaning we wish to serve and house individuals that either live or work in Redondo Beach and are experiencing homelessness here. And we know from the most recent homeless count, there are nearly 99 remaining unsheltered individuals in the city of Redondo Beach, 15 or so of which are present, I think up to 20 now are living at the pallet shelter. And the goal is to create essentially a continuum of housing from the pallet shelter into housing opportunities here at the Moonstone. And then when and if our residents are ready to move beyond, that would create opportunities for the next individual or household in need. All of our housing will be oriented to individuals that are earning upwards of 30% of area median income. And that is essentially established by the funding we've received by both the state and the county. Our in-house residential services team is called Oasis, and they will be providing the intensive case management, the full-time case manager that will be working at the site. We very much employ a whatever it takes approach to ensure that our clients and our residents are successful. And that looks very different for every person. It really depends on their circumstances and needs. Our case managers start by doing assessments and developing individualized case management plans for our residents. We meet with our residents at least once a week. We knock on doors. We encourage them to regularly engage with our case manager. And our case managers oftentimes will work very collaboratively with our property management arm to ensure that people remain housed. If and when there's ever an issue, it could be a non-payment of rent, it could be a behavioral issue. We work very hard to ensure that housing is retained. What we're trying to avoid is creating homelessness. We're trying to address homelessness, not create additional homelessness. We work with our clients to ensure they have access to all the various benefit programs that they're entitled to. We want them to achieve whatever educational and employment goals that they might set for themselves. And we do lots of linkages to other resources and services like healthcare, mental health care, et cetera. I alluded to this earlier, but the goal is to work very collaboratively with the city to establish this local continuum of housing. The city has established a number of outstanding resources, including the homeless court, including the pallet shelter. And what we want to do is to blend the Moonstone into that continuum and create flow and create fluidity where people can move through the shelter into the Moonstone. And when and if ready, they can port their vouchers or port their rental assistance into other housing opportunities, creating more opportunities for the next households that need housing assistance. We've established a website the address of which is on the screen. Our contact information is here, and we encourage you and or members of the public that have questions about the project to please reach out to us. We are here for the long haul. We look forward to establishing a really positive working relationship with the city. I think we've done that over the course of the past 6+ months, and we look forward to entertaining any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners?
I have a few questions. Thank you for the presentation. That was very helpful and informative. I think a lot of people in the local area are concerned about who's going to be staying at the shelter, and I think you addressed that quite nicely. I have a couple questions. One, are all of the people moving into Moonstone are going to come from the pallet shelter, or how are you going to vet them and where are they coming from?
The referrals into the housing will come through the city's or the SPA's coordinated entry system that is managed by Harbor Interfaith. It's likely that many referrals could come from the pallet shelter, but that is not the exclusive source of referrals. It could be that certain individuals in the pallet shelter may not wish to live here and may wish to move on. However, what I can say is that the goal is to establish a local preference, meaning we want to be serving the individuals that are experiencing homelessness here locally and not be bringing in individuals from other geographies.
Then my next question is, it indicates here on one of the screens, you talk about the Moonstone as an indefinite stay. When you say indefinite stay, your goal is to get them permanent housing, like this is permanent housing, but not permanent housing, I guess is my question.
Yeah, so these units are small, so it could be that individuals after living here for a year or two wish to move on into a larger apartment and take the rental assistance that they have and apply it to a different apartment elsewhere. The lease that we'll sign will be a 1-year lease, and after the expiration of that term, the lease rolls to a month-to-month basis. So an individual, if they are happy to remain living at the Moonstone, they're paying their rent, they're being good neighbors, they're welcome to continue living there. There's not an outside duration on their tenancy.
And have you set the goal as to what the rent's going to be and how people are going to pay that?
Yes. The rents are ultimately established by the state and the county. We intend to work locally with the city to ideally secure rental assistance for the property. If not the city, then the county of Los Angeles. We have secured an operating subsidy from the state of California, and that really ultimately establishes what the rent is. The tenant pays essentially 30% of their income, their adjusted income in the form of rent, with the operating subsidy picking up the difference. So it has been established, yes.
So I'll also add that the city's housing authority is looking into making this a project-based voucher through the Section 8 housing program, and that would allow the city to have a little bit more say and control, local control as to who gets into Project Moonkey. And we are working with Brian and his team on developing that project-based voucher program. But through that program, that would establish the rents as well, based on HUD's requirements.
And I guess my final question is basically because of the fact that these are only 1 bedrooms, you're assuming it's going to be 1, maybe 2 people living in an apartment? Or how is that?
We expect the occupancy to be 1 person per unit. These are actually not 1 bedrooms, these are studios.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the great presentation. And yeah, there's a lot of talk in the community about this. I think there was a very somewhat contentious meeting, right, with the council member recently. So you guys have done this same type of project like in 2,000 houses in California, or is this a new thing?
This type of housing is, thank you for the question. This type of housing is what we would call permanent supportive housing, meaning it's housing designated for individuals that are experiencing homelessness and have other disabling conditions. So we do lots of this kind of housing. We have more than 1,000 units of permanent supportive housing in our portfolio, the wealth of which is located in SPA 8, the same service planning area as Redondo, in the city of Long Beach, just on the other side of the peninsula. So we do have more than 20 years of experience operating this very type of housing, and we bring that experience with us here.
So do you get the similar reaction from the communities whenever these houses are come up in these areas?
I think different communities have different levels of experience and exposure to permanent supportive housing. So I live in the South Bay myself, and there's not a lot of examples of permanent supportive housing here in the South Bay. So I think we've gotten more questions around what this is, and we've tried to do a lot of education around this. And what we've said to the community is, look, we have to earn your trust. We can point to all of our experience in Long Beach and in other jurisdictions, but we realize at the end of the day, we've got to show you what this will look like, and we want to earn the community's trust.
So what about job training and things like that?
That is part of the case management and supportive services menu that we will provide to our residents. We will certainly work with residents to develop their job readiness. We will refer them to other outside resources like Goodwill, other vocational training programs. It really depends on what the needs and desires of the individual are. But yes, that is a big part.
Sorry, is there an employment requirement or is it not an employment requirement?
There is not necessarily an employment requirement. We encourage our residents to maintain a job, to get a job, maintain a job, find other ways to stay engaged. Not every resident may be able to hold down a job for different reasons, and there may be a disability at play. But having a sense of purpose and belonging in life is really important, and we encourage that. And that can look different ways for different people. And for many people, it's a job, but for other people, it could be somewhere to go and volunteer for the day, or groups to participate in. So that type of engagement is really important, in particular as individuals are healing and recovering from various illnesses.
Well, that 30% that they can pay may come from like Social Security or?
Exactly. It can come from either earned income or from benefits income. But the idea is that they have skin in the game, that 30% of their income is paid in the form of rent.
The last question, addiction issues. A lot of people who are unhoused struggle with all types of course, addiction issues. How are you going to specifically address that issue?
To the extent substance use is a barrier in someone's life, we will work with them to address that issue. This is not necessarily a sober living environment. We don't screen for drug or alcohol use, but to the extent drug or alcohol use impairs someone's ability to abide by the lease, or it disturbs the peace, or it disrupts the quiet enjoyment of the premises for other neighbors or for the surrounding community, then our property management team, Alex, and our case management team will intervene to try to address the issue. And if that means being referred to a substance use treatment program, we will absolutely do that. We've got lots of linkages in the area that we can refer to. Hopefully that answers the question.
Do you have like an addiction medicine person? Like, because, I'm a physician and I know, like drugs like naltrexone, bupropion, these things are like very underused to alcoholism, opiates, cigarettes, a bunch of stuff, right? So is there any incorporation of that? Have you guys thought of that?
Well, we are not licensed medical providers. We are
Bringing someone in, to...
Absolutely. I can speak in Long Beach. We have an on-site health clinic, TCC Family Health, which is a nonprofit based in Long Beach. They have actually a 40-hour-a-week fairly qualified health clinic in our community. So we encourage those types of linkages. Now, we don't have space to open a little clinic in our community, but we very much will try to find our local healthcare providers and encourage our residents to take advantage of those resources.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. There's this whole notion of housing is health, and you really can't address people's underlying health issues when they are in an unhoused state. And so by getting someone into a permanent home, getting them stable, we're able to address chronic conditions, right? Whether it's heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, it could be a substance use issue. But addressing those issues from a place of housing is much more productive and impactful than trying to address health issues when someone's experiencing homelessness on the street, as you all know.
Sure. Yeah, totally agree.
Great questions, great
I've
presentation.
got some questions.
Yep, go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, we're very happy with your presentation because with the resumption of live meetings, we appreciate the fact that you would come in tonight with a presentation so well thought out. So here are some of my questions. Being that you've been in countless meetings with our city representatives, you understand that moving from pallet shelters to 20 motel units is a considerable step for us, because in my view, it's the first time something like this will be in a true neighborhood. Not to say that where the pallet shelters are located aren't, but it's mostly Pacific Crest Cemetery. So my questions are, well, first I want to start with another statement, which is that I think this is a great opportunity to show that there's some leadership in districts 1 and 2 that we will tackle a problem and not the perception of this being pushed into another district. So we welcome the opportunity. How did you decide on this particular property?
It's a great question and something we heard from the community a lot. Why 716 South PCH? For one, the property was for sale, was listed for sale. For two, these home key resources from the state had come out and the state had just announced about $1 billion of funding to help acquire projects just like this. So we were out as part of our work as affordable housing developers. We're prospecting, we're looking for opportunities. We were aware of some of the resources here in the city of Redondo Beach, including the homeless court, including the pallet shelter. And we thought that a project of this scale, 20 units, which happened to match very nicely with the size of the pallet shelter, felt right. It's in a commercial district. It's on a state highway. It's on PCH. There's good access to transit. There's access to shopping. There's access to parks, libraries, amenities that people need to live fulfilling and productive lives. And so as we went through the diligence process, it felt like this was a natural opportunity. We also spoke to members of the city staff. We came and presented to a council meeting last November and shared with the city what our thoughts were and the fact that we were planning to pursue state funding, and we received essentially a thumbs up from the city. And one thing led to another, and we secured the funding and then ultimately closed on the property in June of this year, excuse me.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, you've checked off the boxes for me so far as regarding how you came up with that particular property and that you've reached out to residents in the neighborhood and have had meetings with them. And you've also explained to me how long the lease would be for a resident, so I'm happy with that answer. And all I can say is that Redondo Beach is proud to be on the forefront of something like this. It seems like a natural move from the pallet shelter to this type of housing. I hope that works out. As a veteran, I also hope that there are veterans that would take advantage of something like this because they make up a considerable portion of our homelessness, and I'd like to see them taken care of. So once again, thank you for a well thought out. Thank you for meeting with all of the people, because it's more than just city staff or council members. You've got there's an impact to the neighborhood. So we appreciate that you've reached out the best that you can and explained. Have you had a presentation like this, let's say with anybody directly that adjoins that property?
We've done now, I think, 3 community meetings. This presentation, a variation of it, is posted to our project website. We've spoken to a number of neighbors, in particular those on Gertruda behind us. We've got an open line of communication with our councilman, and we'll continue to take comments and receive feedback and try to provide responses.
Well, I wish you best in your endeavor. Thank you very much for coming to tonight's meeting. An excellent presentation. Thank you for working with the city of Redondo Beach.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, guys.
Go ahead.
Sorry, have you guys are you thinking of doing working with some sort of university or doing a study to see outcome measures for, it's like a nice, kind of, natural experiment, taking 20 people, who get housed versus 20 people who don't, and seeing different metrics, outcome measures and stuff.
Yeah. So in our community in Long Beach, we do a lot of evaluation. We partner with with Cal State University Long Beach and some of the professors there that assist us with doing impact evaluation. To the extent we have a local university or professor that wishes to study this, I think we would absolutely be open to that. We regularly look for and evaluate ourselves based on housing stability. So how long is an individual remaining in housing once housed? How is their income changing, right? Are they getting access to benefits and earned income in a way that grows their income and assets over time and further enhances their stability and productiveness? We also look at other health measures and impacts. So we do some level of self-evaluation, but to the extent there are any enterprising professors or other professionals out there that wish to work with us on some type of a longitudinal study, thinking about the pallet shelter and this, I think we would be open to talking to you about that.
I think Would you say that this housing is going to be opened up in a more like, more socioeconomically advantaged area compared to some of the other ones?
I think that's fair to say. This is what we would consider to be a high opportunity and a high resource
So
area.
it'd be interesting to see a study when opening, one of these units in this area versus another unit and seeing, another community and seeing if there'd be additional benefits that accrue to the individuals and seeing what impact it is to the community as well.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting study.
I don't know if we know anybody who could do that. I don't know.
I think after the football game, we're going to have a pretty good debate as to which university to pick. So, and Cal State Long Beach and Dominguez Hills both have very good masters in public administration programs. So there's a lot of good candidates. Be happy to look into it and go through our regular path to get those experts over to you. That would be of interest to you.
Please.
Be used to sell like these projects in other communities when,
Like a white paper.
yeah, exactly. And so like going to other more socioeconomically advantaged communities.
And maybe using some city resources to run some data.
Yeah.
So then you can put down Redondo Beach City. That'd be good. Commissioner Gittens, did you have any questions, sir?
Yeah, I have a question. And thank you for your presentation. It was very well prepared, very comprehensive. I had a question around ingress and egress, which you mentioned earlier in your presentation. Do you see any issues? Have you spotted just kind of how the traffic flow will work when I know you're on that intersection. That intersection actually is pretty close to my daughter's elementary school, so I want to make sure I say that, and they're actually in that crowd right now. Just wanted to see if there are anything in the study as far as when you were researching the property, developing the area, scouting the area, as far as safety support from local officials here that will probably be providing you that support that you need for the residents. Did you see anything that will come out as an issue or just an opportunity, rather, too, as for the ingress and egress for the space?
Well, one thing we noticed, and I'll let maybe Kyle speak to this a little bit, is that the existing motel was simply had an open driveway. And we felt it was important to incorporate a sliding vehicular gate to prevent people from coming in and out of the property that don't live there, but also to provide a sense of security for the residents that will live there. Is there anything else you'd add?
Yeah, so and additionally, to the vehicular access gate, we're also improving like the pedestrian experience. So as you're entering and exiting the particular drive aisle associated with the property, originally there wasn't any sort of pedestrian access. So you're really talking to vehicular access and the need for some sort of safety as you're exiting the property, just given that it's so close to the intersection. That's something that I think when it comes to the actual access to the property, the vehicular gate is going to help just because it's going to allow for there to be just more, I guess, more focus on, leaving the property because you're going to be limiting the number of cars going in and out. But then number two, we're also expanding, you're not expanding the drive aisle, but we're adding a pedestrian walking aisle on the side of the drive aisle just to make it more pedestrian friendly. So I guess talking to your concern regarding vehicular access, there will be, safety measures such as what we mentioned. But I would also, talk about the use of automobiles for the residents in general as well, because as we know from Long Beach, the particular residents that live at these sorts of properties don't have their car ownership ratios are much lower than normally. So it'll actually have much less traffic when you compare it to, like a commercial motel or hotel in that sense as well. So I think the addition of, the improved infrastructure, both pedestrian and vehicular, as well as just the decreased traffic coming from the property compared to, what it once was, I think that helps in a sense as well.
Yeah, and I think I was just thinking about in general, the obviously each resident, the motel that comes in and out, obviously they have a parking space individually selected for them because they're going to be patrons of that motel, right? So, but I was thinking about the additional members of whoever will be a part of that individual household, that traffic that will come in that space. Not so much of a concern, just wanted to know if that was thought about and just in moving forward with the additional planning.
Yeah, so I think so it definitely was thought about because actually a number of the improvements that we're making that I mentioned previously, so the vehicular gate, pedestrian gate, the improved security system, all of that are actually the product of all of these meetings that we've had with the public. So all of those were initially not included within our scope, and we've added that based on, community feedback. So based on yours, that's something we can go back to our architect and discuss and see if there's anything. The first thing that comes to mind, in my opinion, is really those sort of like those mirrors that you can put right around where people are taking off. So that's probably something that we can look into and see if that's available as well.
Outstanding.
The only other thing I can think of is, like when you're driving in El Segundo, they have the lights light up as you're crossing a crosswalk or something like that. But,
Yeah.
that can cause a lot of distractions. I mean, that's right up against PCH. I saw a car just run right into a church but a week and a half ago. So there's so many opportunities for mayhem there. So thank you for listening to the public and making it better.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, that's something that we can, I'll go back to our architect and see what's what. So
Thank you.
for sure.
And the only question I had was in regards to the support services that you mentioned for the residents, making sure that they're getting the necessary help, support that they need, obviously with everything that may be going on in their lives at that point in time. With regards to rent and how they're able to pay for rent. Just wanted to know if there was a plan in place for, obviously, we don't want to think about the worst case scenario, but not being able to pay their rent at a certain point in time of their stay at this facility. Just anything as far as support services there, what would be the thought process if, you had to kind of had a tough discussion with your staff and your board in regards to a particular resident and how that will play out, post or pre?
Yeah, so this happens from time to time and, it can look different ways. In some, it could potentially be a medical stay at a hospital and someone they miss their rent payment, right? And so really what we end up doing is the case manager would be activated and would try to figure out what the cause of the non-payment was. And we regularly work with residents to the extent that there's a valid reason for non-payment. We work with them to enter into what we would call a payment plan or pledge to try to help them retain their housing. And we allow them to make good on their past due debts. In some cases, rare cases, the resident does not cooperate. And in those tough cases, we proceed with an unlawful detainer action. And we don't like to go there, but that is a tool that we wield as a land. At the end of the day, we're a landlord. We need to collect rent to keep the property maintained, right? And so non-payment of rent does not, is a non-starter for us. There's got to be a very good reason for it. We do, like I said, show some forbearance. We want to keep people housed, so we will allow them to enter into those payment plans. But if worse comes to worse, we sometimes do have to move to evict.
Beach Cities is like down the street from here. Do you guys ever have you guys thought of collaborating with them or some of the health things we were talking about, or they have a lot of resources, public health resources?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Beach Cities and there's some other treatment programs and things of that nature that our case manager, once we have him or her seated, we will certainly be making those connections. And our friends at Harbor Interfaith, I think, will be a really good resource to help make those connections as well.
How about South Bay Investment Board?
The South Bay WIB, yeah, that's a great resource as well for residents that are interested in securing a job or improving their job prospects.
I think that's the one that the city of Redondo Beach uses, Joy. Yeah, that would be a good one. I know El Camino and Harbor College, of course, have training programs, but I don't think they are directly linked. I think that's the main resource. But I did have a question, and we talked about all these great opportunities and strengths, and one of the weaknesses of Redondo Beach is it's so darn expensive here. But on occasion, there's the challenge, I'll say. I don't want to say threat, but okay. So San Jose had a shelter, and there was a stabbing and a death a few years ago. And we had a stabbing on a bus, and I don't know if it was related to a feeding. I never quite got an answer out of that. Maybe one day we'll figure it out, but the sheriff came by to chat with us a few years ago about that. And I know you screen for issues like that. And I know you have 1,000 units that you operate in Long Beach, and I know there's probably a lot of internal data you have, but of all the years you've done these shelters, or not shelters, but temporary living opportunities, how many people have been hurt or killed just from people having mental illness over the last 20 years?
I can count them on one hand.
Good.
And I think they're rare. I don't know that we can always attribute them to mental health issues.
Okay.
I think over the past couple years since the pandemic, we've seen a lot of behaviors that are atypical. And you see this across all aspects of society, in schools and in employment settings, residential settings, and we're definitely not immune to that.
Agreed. Yeah, thank you.
Do you screen for, sorry,
No problem.
do you screen for like mental illness and untreated, controlled versus not? I mean, my brother actually has schizophrenia, and I can, sometimes he's very difficult, and it's difficult for him. I would imagine him in one of these housing during some times when he's not taking his meds and stuff, and it would be very difficult in that situation. Potential disruption.
Yeah, so that would not be something we screen for in terms of eligibility for the housing, but it's something that our case manager would seek to assess at a very early stage. So we have to abide by HIPAA, as you can appreciate. And so that would not be something we would ask about during the lease-up process, but our case manager certainly will want to know and work with residents to figure out what their health conditions are and help them try to address them.
I would think they would come with a background if you're getting those people connected from somewhere else, that there's already been a vetting process. They're not going to come to you from the street to get these houses or studios.
Most likely not. Most likely they'll be referred through the coordinated entry system. And like I said earlier, Harbor Interfaith is the gatekeeper for the CES, as it's called. And so they'll have a very good sense of who the residents are, and their case managers will work with our case managers to do a warm handoff.
Are there any other questions? What a great presentation and discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much for your questions. We are happy to stay in touch with you, and please feel free to reach out if you have questions.
We'll have to have you back after it's opened,
Yeah.
up and running, to see how it's going.
We will plan to do that.
And I know we're trying to drive to zero, and I think this will be part of a solution to bring the number of people experiencing homelessness in Redondo to zero. So let's do it, and good luck, and thank you so much. Motion to close, or are we good?
You can proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice Thanksgiving.
You too.
Oh, good, I found my way back. Okay, great. Let's go to J2, discussion of recent fire events. And I don't see Chief Yang here.
Absent.
All right,
You can proceed.
thank you. Let's discuss recent events in the city prosecutor's office. Joy Ford, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair. Not too much going on in the office. We had 2 graduations at the last homeless court. Our next homeless court will be December 7, and we are hoping to see the DMV to come visit and view our proceedings. And hopefully we'll have more graduations then.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Joy?
Not this time.
Okay. Could you give us a status update about, sounds like DMV is looking at opportunities to improve or participate on the homeless court. Is there also the Social Security Administration or the Cal Works coordinator for the county or any of the other stakeholders that we spoke with? What are your thoughts there?
Social Security is not able to participate in our homeless court at this time, but they did provide us with some resource material to pass out, and the other benefits have not contacted our office.
Just trying to think.
Who does the GR, general relief? Is that through WageWorks as well, just for single people without children, or do you know?
I don't know.
Because I'm just wondering, because most of the people in homeless court that you're dealing with, do they have children, or they don't have, or at least they don't have custody of their children?
There are a handful of people that have children.
That's an interesting approach right there, too.
So, yeah, I was just wondering, in terms of the people going to the homeless courts, are they hooked up with WageWorks or general relief, or how does that work?
Many of them are connected with general relief, and it's all through their housing navigators and social workers, and based on the individual, the case managers will determine what benefits they qualify for and help them with anything they need.
So those people don't necessarily need to be at the homeless court because they're working behind the scenes?
Usually, yes.
I don't know if you guys are familiar, general relief is something that individual homeless people can get. It's kind of like wage work, but it's for somebody who doesn't have children, because wage work is specifically for people that have children. So if you have children, you could do, it's welfare, it's the same concept, newer wording.
What would we want to get out of those groups to make it more productive and get more people through the court process? Would we want a booth there with an actual official with all the paperwork, or could you just print all that stuff out and have somebody at Redondo that could interact with those people that go into the court process just to give them the information they need? What would be helpful there? Because the state was very helpful introducing the county director, but then when we got to the county director, we heard crickets. They didn't want to set up a meeting, and then the county administrator said, we won't be having anybody show up, but here's our website. What can we do, if anything, to improve, or does it pretty much take a state legislator to pass a bill to get them to work with us?
I mean, having a person there is always better and streamlines the process for the clients to be able to get those benefits. But what can we do to get them to participate? I think I don't have an answer for that.
Could we better train a Redondo employee to speak to those types of options so they are armed, so to speak, with all the information they need once graduation happens to get all the paperwork done quickly? Or doesn't seem like we have an in-house expert to get them off the street, but it doesn't sound like we have the go-to person to go through the bureaucracy to get all the paperwork together to get them into the shelter, back into the system. I'm trying to figure out what we need or who we need to bring in, because the DMV, I mean, we got lucky with that one. Because if I had run into the other options, that the health services and stuff, I would have given up. But yeah, it's pretty amazing how bureaucratized and slow moving it is. But if we can get DMV on board and avoid all of those visits that Lila has to do for people experiencing homelessness and just get a driver's license. So if there's any other ideas, let me know. But yeah, the non-committed response that we got from county was kind of, I guess, and I copied county's director of justice on that email. Still didn't do anything. Maybe that's the next step, talk to county. But any other feedback?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. Does anybody have any other questions?
Sure, I have a quick one. How was it received in Hermosa Beach when we did the homeless court there as a temporary measure, just for them to see? I mean, they probably had observed ours for the past year or two, and then when it was their turn, or how did they choose to have that there?
They saw the success that our city was having with it and asked us to be a part of it. And so because we're already contracted with Hermosa Beach to conduct their prosecutor services, it was really an easy transition, and all we asked in return was that they host a quarter of the sessions. And when we were there, they were great. They were very inviting. They were very accommodating. I did not receive any complaints from residents, and the staff there was incredible. They were just so accommodating and helpful.
Where did you guys hold that?
At the Kelly Courts next to the police station on Valley.
How many homeless do they have in Hermosa?
I could not tell you that right
Well,
now.
maybe a little bit less than us.
Definitely less.
I see. Thank you. Great. Does that, any other questions? We're all good? All right. Let's see what we can do here. So
Thanks for your hard work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And we're on to law enforcement crime recap, Officer Lofstrom.
Wanted to make a dramatic entrance. Okay, just a couple things I'd like to cover here in the information I attached for the part one recap. The first segment, there was a much higher amount of the burglaries, about 8 each of vehicle and commercial, and another 4 residential. And then the following segment, it kind of switched, from that to theft from motor vehicle and stolen vehicles. And then in the second segment, burglaries come down, and the commercial burglaries come down and residential burglary goes up. And then we had substantially less stolen vehicles and theft from motor vehicles, just one stolen vehicle and 2 theft from motor vehicles in the second segment that I sent you. If there's any questions regarding the part one recap or other recent events.
How about
Please let me know.
catalytics?
How about,
Catalytic thefts.
it's always a thing. We're not noticing any huge abnormal spike as of late. I haven't received a ton of inquiry on the etching. We haven't had an event since about last November. I've had a few phone calls here and there, but a local business in Redondo Beach does it for free. And I happily refer them to there and explain to people how easy it is to do themselves, as we're not trying to monopolize the etching business.
Good.
But a cage remains to be the most effective preventative measure.
Very good. I heard some guys were driving through another city in a Lamborghini doing catalytic converter theft, so
I
somebody's.
did see that.
Yeah, sounds like a good hobby
It was
for
real.
them.
We're in the wrong profession.
Questions?
Yeah,
It's a movie.
yes, gone in 60 seconds. Any other questions? Have we had any, besides the thefts and robberies and so forth, are there any assault, battery, or previous follow-ups with the gentleman that was harassing people with a handgun in North Redondo Beach? Did that case ever get resolved?
That I don't know. I don't have the specific details on that case.
Okay,
The recap I send is primarily part one.
yep,
The other types of crimes that don't fit into that category aren't covered in this particular segment.
okay.
But typically, activity like that slows down a little bit in the winter.
I see. Are there any other questions for Officer Lofstrom about the crime report?
No questions, but it's very accurate and up to date because I can see my neighbor's car that was broken into is front and center right here. And the list of items that were stolen, except for his golf clubs. Which would,
Hard to carry.
did that turn the crime into something else if we get to a particular?
Conspicuous.
Tragic.
Oh, no.
Is there an enhancement for golf clubs? Is
Well, no,
that
I
what
mean,
you're
as far
asking?
as if you get then to items stolen out of a vehicle and you get to a certain amount of dollar-wise,
Oh,
Yeah,
what the
it would be-
valuation is, does that change the crime?
Same crime, misdemeanor theft and felony theft, same category of crime, theft from motor, for the recap, theft from motor vehicle. Vehicle burglary usually involves force or some other means of getting into a locked vehicle.
So it's its own entry into a locked vehicle, no matter what's stolen out of it, is a category unto itself.
Right, so theft, within the theft from an unlocked vehicle, you'll have a misdemeanor amount up to $950, and then above $950 becomes a felony, both theft, and then vehicle burglary is entering a locked vehicle, usually by force or some other articulable means of some kind of getting into a locked vehicle. Then it becomes a burglary, and no matter what you take, it's a felony.
Thank you for clearing that up for me.
any other questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you for the report. Officer Lostrom, any other updates?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to J5 and J6, community policing, and then volunteers in policing report.
For community events, we had the second of our two e-bike community meetings. The second one was better attended than the first at Anderson Park. And that was productive, getting feedback and talking to residents. We had our Halloween movie night over at the high school auditorium, and our decorating skills were on full display and very well received. The domestic violence candlelight vigil happened. If you guys made it over to the front of the station, there was a slight weather issue only during setup, and then thankfully for the start of the event, once I was able to seek shelter, then it stopped raining. But that's always an outstanding event, and Lieutenant Jeff Mendens was recognized by our program as being a great contributor to that. We had our drug take-back event, and that's in partnership with the DEA, so they send an agent to our collection site. And this year, we collected over 400 pounds
Good.
Crazy, I saw that. That's
of
crazy.
prescription drugs.
What were the specifics? Like what type of drugs?
Wouldn't you like to know, sir?
I'm curious what's in the neighborhood.
There is restrictions that sit in, right, typically over the counter, old medications, heart medications and stuff like that. I imagine, I don't thoroughly inspect everything because they typically come like most people do with a big giant bag of, their recently passed away grandparents or something, or something like that, or old stuff they've just collected over time that they're getting rid of, and it all goes in a big box, and then the boxes are designated, sealed, weighed, and then the DEA picks it up and they take it to a giant incinerator.
Wow.
But 400 pounds, most in the South Bay combined
Wow.
at our site.
Crazy.
So our site remains to be extremely popular, and all those 400 pounds of drugs are no longer going into the environment or in the wrong hands or in innocent hands. Homeless court was back, which obviously Joy touched on. So upcoming events. This one was slightly misplaced. Yesterday they had the Boys and Girls Club. We help provide a venue to the Boys and Girls Club when they do a Thanksgiving food drive. That was yesterday afternoon. Starting on the 25th, our domestic violence victim advocacy program starts the toy, coat, and gift card drive There's collection sites everywhere, including the lobby and the station. And if you plan on attending Let It Snow Redondo, which I will cover shortly, there will also be a site there. It's a free event. We're providing lots of fun. So it's just a good, decent place to donate if you're thinking about it. The Redondo Beach POA, Santa Sleigh begins, that we get help from the Firefighters Association, and the city allows us to go out and do that every night. That starts on the 28th. So it's the real Santa Claus, just to clarify. December 1st is the Riviera Village Holiday Stroll. We usually have a couple officers working that. And then the big one is Let It Snow Redondo. We partnered with Sky One Federal Credit Union again, and they sponsored the event. And we're trucking in 40 tons of snow this year.
Wow.
It's a free event, cookies, cocoa, arts and crafts, games, big blow-up slide. The real Santa will also be making an appearance there. And snowball throwing at targets, not one another. Our Citizens Academy graduation for class 46 is on December 16th in here. And we have the American Red Cross blood drive on January 5th. We typically partner with them once a year in the winter and with UCLA in the summer. I'd also like to mention that class 47 of the Citizens Police Academy begins February 1st. So new community-based officer recently took over that program, and it has received rave reviews. So I recommend you attend. And that does it for community events, volunteers in policing report. October had 375 hours of service. We've been actively recruiting and interviewing to hire more volunteers. We find them extremely valuable. They help out with all our major events. They do, as you can see, the big list of all these things that they do all the time. So we're actively pursuing to expand our program. I think there was an update in here. Here you go. 2 candidates in backgrounds and 1 more who just submitted an application. And they had just 1 retirement in October. So currently ahead of the game. And that concludes that.
How many people are taking the Citizens Academy for class 46, do you know?
Yes. Class 46 has 13. I typically start with a higher amount.
Yeah.
And then some schedule conflicts come up. This last class, I had 20. There was a request made at a high level for it to not coincide with city council meetings. So it got moved, and that changed a lot of people's plans for the fall session. But going forward now, it won't coincide. And as each class approaches, I usually develop a list of about 40 to 45 interested people that just slowly dwindles down, because there is a small background check, and it's 100% worth it, but it is somewhat of a big commitment to go 14 Wednesdays in a row. But there is a huge party at the end with cake.
The coffee every week is
And you
divine.
graduate and you get a badge. You get like a real badge. It's super small and it's just like a pin on your shirt, but it's technically a badge still. So hopefully we can shuffle over some of those last minute dropouts to the next class also. Plenty of room though. Plenty of room.
Anyone not done it yet?
I haven't done it, I'm gonna do it.
Highly recommend. I've heard the moderator of the program is just outstanding in many ways.
Bring chips and salsa. Everybody will like you.
Any other questions for community policing or volunteers?
Just a question on the DA drug take back event, when that next one will occur next year?
Typically, we've been participating once a year in the fall.
Okay.
but it comes around twice. So I will be actively pursuing a second opportunity based on this last turnout.
Okay, great.
But typically it's national and it's twice a year. I think the last Saturday in April and the last Saturday in October,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
Do you guys work with the hospitals and medical offices to publicize it?
Well, there's a ton of sites for stuff like that. Some, even some CVSs I've seen have like a disposal. I think maybe it's just via the tradition or the convenience. I don't know how difficult it is elsewhere. Ours is typically you go up, you hand over the bag, and we ask you if there's any sharps, and we take it. And we usually have some outside service providers that sometimes come attend. In last October, we had a couple representatives from like a drug rehabilitation program come and pass out information. I usually have the information for like sharps disposal and hazardous waste disposal on hand because that comes up with this topic. But there's more than our site. I think we're just successful and because it's convenient and easy and we get the word out there. And, I've heard those neighborhood watch newsletters are highly comprehensive. So,
Good jokes, too.
and the joke of the week,
Peach Gobbler?
peach gobbler. So I think we just do a better job of getting it out there, and the tradition of it has drawn more people to us than full-time receptacles.
Sure.
How about the flashing lights off that one wheeled contraption that you have that you put at intersections? Can you put it there too?
Oh, the trailer.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll make announcements with the signboard typically also for things like that, the Citizens Academy, or any events we have coming up.
Great. Any other questions? Let's go to item K. Referrals to staff. Who wants to start?
We had a litany of lists last time, I thought.
What's that?
Didn't we have a litany of lists last time?
I did. I narrowed it down a little bit.
So far, we've covered e-bike and Project Home Key. The next two I have on my list are the school district and the churches. If there's any other approvals you want to make or requests for a certain order, I'm just getting them scheduled out as I go.
So we've already made a motion on the two that you just said, so you're working on
Correct.
those? Okay.
So after today, I'll reach out to the school district contact I have and set up for the next meeting.
Were you able to contact the Brady person?
I do, yes, I do have a contact for that. If it can coincide, then
That'd be ideal.
I'll
yeah.
attempt to coincide it.
Okay.
Sounds good. Have you spoken with Steve is it Steve from the Brady?
Yeah.
Have you had a direct conversation with him yet?
I can reach out again if you haven't.
That's Brady.
That's what email I sent, yeah.
Yeah, I sent him an email and I saved his contact info.
Okay.
So I'll be reaching out probably within the
If you have any
next.
trouble getting a hold of them.
This week's a little weird for everybody, but.
Yeah.
No, it's tough all around. It's,
totally.
yeah.
And
it's-
then just as information to the commission, the January meeting is not on the third Monday because the third Monday is Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah.
The bylaws say when it's supposed to be, and I'm now forgetting right in this moment when that is. But I will know for certain, and we'll have it written on this Public Safety Commission notepad for you by next meeting. I think it's either the same week Wednesday or the fourth Wednesday, but it moves to a different spot on that January because it's known that it's the third Monday is the federal holiday.
Great. Thank you for that update. From Tom Osborne, Deputy Director of Cal OES. He and his grant coordinator would do a presentation on opportunities to make the schools safer. And they notified us that they need a 10-day lead time to authorize travel arrangements. And just in my communications with them, Officer Lofstrom, both with the feeding, the churches, as well as the state of California, I got the feeling that December and January are going to be tough days or tough meeting dates to have those critical meetings, both for them to make arrangements due to the holiday as well as our arrangements. And just the way it's hard to get I would just say it's hard to get a quorum. And I would be a little bit nervous about scheduling anything until February. That's when I would target it. And
Okay.
it might be a long meeting, but I would propose, and if anybody wants to say, no thanks, let's do February, March, then, but I would try to do both on February, if that's good.
And anyone you guys refer to me, I have an open dialogue with about that, just candidly speaking about how this meeting, the commission meets and, what kind of timing is good for them and such. So once they get in touch with me, usually I can figure something out, and I just keep this very special notepad here with all that info on it.
Yep. How about the Dr. Veal or Lisa Veal over at the school district? Has there been any communication back and forth?
Yes, I let her know that I would reach out when it would come time for trying to schedule her on the agenda.
And then Fire Chief Butler, through Elizabeth Howes, was supposed to also liaise with the OES department. Are we going to have him at that meeting as well, or would that be a Chief Yang deliverable?
Usually I just grab them both for the fire section. So I don't think that'd be too hard to have them present at the meeting.
That'd be great. I just want to bring any opportunity I can for the city of Redondo Beach and the safety of our schools and our public safety in general. Bring them every opportunity we can. Any other comments or referrals to staff?
Not
I'll just say thanks for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joy.
Thank you, Officer Lofstrom. Thank you, Joy. And I'd like to adjourn this meeting at 8:20 p.m.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Let's, yeah.
So I'm not going to.